but all around the common theme of ghosts. So I do have a picture book that I'm going to start with, which is The Ghost of Nicholas Grebe, a wonderful story by Tony Johnston. And then I'm going to read a book called Moving Up in Age, to a book from a short story called The Halloween Dance by R.L. Stine, who is the author of the very popular Goosebumps series, which are horror stories for the elementary school crowd. After that, I have a more modern, contemporary horror story called, well, ghost story. These aren't horror stories necessarily, they're ghost stories. This one's called The Advent Reunion, and followed by, I'll go full goth and read The Judge's House by one of the original goths, Bram Stoker, who, of course, is the creator of Dracula. So, I hope you enjoy these. I will say that aside from the picture book, the other three stories I've all edited down for time. I mean, if I read the entire Bram Stoker story, it's over an hour. So these have all been edited down to a reasonable amount of time while still keeping one story complete. So, without further ado, I'd like to begin. I thought there might be some kids here, so I was going to have some kids come up on the floor. So if any of the kids want to come up on the floor, I'm going to start with The Ghost of Nicholas Grebe, a picture book with a preschool audience that is by Tony Johnston and pictures by S.D. Schindler. All right. Towards year's end, above a rambling farmhouse, the moon rose cold and still. It shone through a window and onto the bed within, where the farmer, Nicholas Grebe, lay sleeping. Oh, come forward. I've got kids.
Hi, guys.
We're doing the children's book first, so mind you, come on, Sarah, so you can see the pictures. Where the farmer, Nicholas Grebe, lay sleeping. It's just the beginning, just starting. In the luminous gloom, precisely at midnight, the old man gave up the ghost. That is to say, he died. The next day dawned exceedingly cold. Unfortunately, as we shall later see, his shivering family hurriedly dug a grave, buried him with a prayer, and hastened back into the warmth of the fire. Outside, beneath pewter skies, Nicholas Grebe was left to rest. A headstone with an angel marked his grave. 1 year later, to the very day, the family gathered at the farm. Everyone feasted and toasted the departed man. In the midst of the festivities, and by peculiar coincidence, at the very stroke of 12, a little dog felt the desire to go outside. Now, as if by some mysterious plan, the animal trotted straight to Nicholas Grebe's grave. His shallow grave. He dug feverishly, heaping a pile of moon-slivered earth behind him. Suddenly, he found something thin and hard, with knobby knobs on the ends, the bone of Nicholas Grebe. Just as the dog started back with his prize, a carriage stopped in the middle of the road. And when the passengers alighted to gaze at the moon, the curious little dog scampered up to the carriage, climbed up the steps, and slipped beneath the seat. Worn out from digging, he fell asleep. Presently, the people returned, and the carriage rumbled off with passengers, dog, and bone. As they melted into the night, something luminous and white arose from the grave of Nicholas Grebe. It floated into the farmhouse, settled itself in a chair before the fire, lifted its voice in a resonant moan. From this night forth I quest, till all my bones together rest. Well, at once everyone stopped toasting and began shrieking. They rushed to their carriages and rattled away, scattering down the dark country lanes like leaves before the wild wind. Only Nicholas Grebe's frightened widow remained, and his unhappy ghost. The ghost began to haunt the farm, looking for the lost bone. Its restless rambles took it from one corner of the place to another. Sometimes something unseen set hens fluttering upon their nests. Sometimes something caused the lids of the kitchen stove to rise as if by levitation. Sometimes an unearthly wind whined in the corn, and ceaseless wailing filled the night.
Forevermore I quest, till all my bones together rest.
While Nicholas Greave's ghost searched in vain, the pilfered bone had begun a remarkable journey. The mysterious carriage made for Boston, clattering straight to the wharf. There, one of its passengers, a sea captain, boarded a whaler bound for the polar north, and right behind him went the little dog, holding fast to the bone all the while. Once aboard, the dog sniffed a few sniffs, found a good spot, and quickly hid his treasure. There he is, running around the bottom of the boat. Never a good idea. Put a dog on a boat. Just as the whaler was departing, the dog, sparked by the excitement, began dashing about the decks, barking. "Ah, great smack and flukes!" cried a sailor. "What's this?" And he set the dog ashore. So the ship sailed, but the dog remained, grieving for the bone, grieving like the ghost of Nicholas Greave. Month after cold month passed. The whaler cut through the perilous waters of the Horn and sailed north, ever north, toward Alaska. Strangely, on the entire voyage, not a trace of a single whale was seen, neither barnacle nor blow. Bored as blubber, one sailor searched for something to carve to pass the time. By oddest chance, or was it, he came upon an object tucked into a shadowy corner, something thin and hard, with knobby knobs on the ends, the bone of Nicholas Greave. The sailor decorated the bone with a scrimshaw ship, a present for his sweetheart, when once again they met. But that was not to be, for soon after, on a night ghostly with fog, the whaler struck an iceberg and sank like a stone. The very next day, there came a fisherman, gliding silently on a large ice floe. By fantastic fluke, he stopped just where the ship had gone down and flung out his net. Along with a mess of shiny fish, what else should he retrieve? A marvel of marvels, the bone of Nicholas Greave. Sorely in need of supplies, he rushed to a trading post and exchanged the bone for goods. So the bone came home to rest, for the moment, between bladder floats and stacks of pellets. Now all the time the bone was traveling, the ghost still haunted the farm. Day and night, night and day, and every year on the eve of the theft, it settled itself before the fire again.
Forevermore I quest, till all my bones together rest.
100 years passed in this way. Precisely 100 years. On a night like that other night so long ago, a great moon rose. Its pale light washed the trees, a spectral white. Inside the farmhouse, a family was gathered. The son had returned to be married, a sailor home from the sea. From far off Alaska, he had brought a satchel full of gifts, which he set down by the hearth. Now, just as the wedding began, a little dog, snoozing by the fire, awoke. He sniffed a few sniffs and made straight for the satchel, and he began chewing happily. Soon he had chewed the handle right off. He trotted it outside, dug a hole, and quickly buried his prize, a thin, hard object adorned with a spidery scrimshaw ship and knobby knobs on the ends. Bought at a trading post for use as a handle, it had at last come home, the bone of Nicholas Greave. Suddenly, from nowhere and from everywhere at once, thunder clapped, lightning forked and flared, every lamp guttered as if blown by bodiless breath. Then, flapping like an empty sleeve, the ghost appeared and declared, "This very hour I end my quest, my bones once more forever rest." And so saying, it was gone. But this was not the end of the tale. Not long afterward, someone chanced to stroll through the graveyard and noticed something that to this day goes utterly unexplained. The angel on Nicholas Greave's headstone had vanished. In its place, a little dog was carved in the stone, and in his mouth he held a bone. So, that's The Ghost of Nicholas Grebe by Tony Johnston, pictures by S.D. Schindler. It's a very fun little book for kids. Now, I'm going to move on a little more older. This, as I said, is The Halloween Dance from R.L. Stine, who is the author of the Goosebumps series. So this is aimed at elementary school, older elementary school kids. It's not a picture book. I hope you enjoy this story. I froze in dread and listened to the words I'd hoped I'd never hear. "We'll have our own Halloween party at home," Mom said. "Won't that be nice?" "But my friends and I want to go out on Halloween," I protested.
Mark, you can invite all your friends here,
Dad said. "It'll be safer." "Invite your whole class," Mom added, smoothing her hand through my hair, which I hated. My little sister, Madison, cheered. "Can I invite my whole class too?" she said, jumping up and down like a monkey. "Of course." Oh, wonderful. We're 13. My friends don't want to hang out with a bunch of babyish 8-year-olds. "Stop complaining. It'll be a great party."
Maybe we'll rent a scary movie.
Dad looked at Madison. Well, not too scary, of course. I'm doomed, I thought. I'll never live this party down. I'm dead. Dead! I was right. Actually, the party was worse than death. Only 8 or 9 of my friends showed up. About 30 of Madison's friends came, all of them dressed as princesses. But my best friend Jake and I came as hideous ghouls from beyond the grave. Our skin was lumpy and green and decaying, and we had bleeding wounds and deep black scars across us from head to foot. I had an eyeball that dangled from its socket, and Jake had a long brown knife handle sticking out of the back of his ripped shirt. My friends stood around the food table looking bored, and then Dad finally pulled out the scary video he'd rented, and I knew this had to be the worst Halloween party ever. It was The Wizard of Oz. Madison and her friends huddled around the living room to watch. I gave Jake a shove towards the door. "Come on, let's get out of here. I can't take it anymore." We crept to the door, opened it quickly, sneaked outside. It was a cold, frosty night. The front lawn glowed like silver under the full moon. The bare trees swayed, creaked. I straightened my ragged ghoul costume and led the way down the driveway. "Where are we going?" Jake asked, glaring back at the home. "Well, anywhere. I don't care. I can't take that babyish party one more minute." It was pretty disturbing. Now, my house stands at the bottom of a steep hill. I pointed up the hill. Well, maybe there are trick-or-treaters up there. Why don't we visit some houses and score some candy? We started across the street when a blaring roar exploded in my ears and a white light dazzled me. I raised my arm to shield my eyes, but I couldn't shut it out. My head throbbed in pain. And then I was blinking in the darkness again. The dangling rubber eyeball just bounced in front of my face. I squinted at Jake. But he kept blinking too. "Did you see that truck?" "Yeah, it almost hit us." "I mean, man, it must have gone 100. "I thought we were dead meat," Jake said, scraping his head. I turned and I saw someone else standing behind us. It was another ghoul, a tall, thin kid with a gaping dark wound in front of his t-shirt. He had long, stringy hair with fat, black bugs poking out of the tangles, and one eye was covered with a slimy patch of green gum. It was pretty cool. "Hey, hi," I said, unable to hide my surprise. "Neat costume."
What's going on?
The kid asked. "We've been stuck in a boring party," Jake told him. "We just escaped. You been trick-or-treating?"
Not yet.
The kid said.
My name is Ray. I just got out too.
He studied Jake and me for a moment.
Want to go to a good party? A really good party?
He didn't wait for us to answer. Limping on one leg, he led the way up the hill and turned toward the old graveyard on the corner. "Where is this party?" I asked.
Not far.
Ray answered. Jake and I followed him up to the graveyard gate. Tall weeds peeked out between the broken pickets. Beyond the gate, the ground sloped up. I could see the crooked rows of gravestones poking up like jagged teeth under the bright moonlight.
Is the party in the graveyard?
Jake asked.
It starts here.
Ray pulled open the gate and waved us in. My shoes sank in the marshy weeds and the air grew cold. I shivered. I don't think we're allowed in here. Are you sure there's a party? Ray cut me off by raising a finger to his lips.
Watch.
His eyes gazed straight ahead at the row of the pale gravestones. Jake and I stared at the gravestones, and I jumped when I heard one hiss. It was soft at first, like a whisper, so I lowered my eyes looking for a cat, but I didn't see one. And the hissing grew louder. It seemed to spread over the ground, and then slender wisps of clouds floated out. I let out a cry when I saw the first bony hand poke up from the ground. I saw the fingers unfurl like spider legs, and then the palm of the hand slapped the dirt, and then another hand reached up, and the two hands pushed against the earth. The low growth made me jump. I gasped when the dirt caved in front of a gravestone, and as the ground split apart, a head poked up from underneath. I saw tufts of black hair, and then a pale forehead, and then two empty eye sockets and a half-rotted face. I tugged Jake's arms. Let's get out of here! But Jake gazed straight ahead, his eyes bulging, his mouth hanging open.
I don't believe this. The Walking Dead. Look, it's just like the movies.
But it's not a movie! I tried to tug Jake away, but he stood frozen as if he was hypnotized. The graveyard was suddenly crowded now. Ghouls climbed up from their graves, groaning and stretching, brushing away the dirt and smoothing back the patchy hair on their gray, decaying scalps. They staggered over to the hard ground.
The party is over there.
Ray pointed to the old caretaker's mansion, dark and abandoned for many years. No way, I said, my whole body shaking. They're dead. Don't you realize they're dead? We don't belong here.
But they won't know,
Jake said.
We look just like the dead tonight, don't we? We can sneak in, Mark. We can party with them, and they'll never know. This is amazing.
I stared at my friend. You really want to do this?
Of course he wants to do it. It's Halloween. It's the only night this can happen. After the party, they'll all do the Halloween dance.
I squinted at him. What's that? He didn't answer. Ray, how come you know so much about this? Again, he didn't answer.
Come on, Mark. Jake started to tug me. We'll never get a chance like this. You were complaining about your wimpy Halloween party. Well, here's a party we will never forget.
But Jake, I tried to pull free.
They won't catch us. They won't even know we're here.
I turned to Ray, and he was gone. I saw him up ahead, near the dark mansion, walking quickly toward the front door.
Let's just stay for a few minutes. We can leave anytime you want. I just want to be able to tell people what it was like.
I didn't want to walk home by myself. I didn't want to leave my best friend here alone in the graveyard. So I said, okay. I took a deep breath, and I followed Jake past the rows of open, empty graves to the old mansion. We stopped inside the front door. Candlelight flickered on the walls. The shadows of ghouls darted and bent with the light. Shadows danced on the ceiling, on the walls, making it appear as if the whole house had come to life. Jake and I found a place of safety on the front stairs behind the wooden banister. Leaning on the wooden rail, we watched. An eyeless old man groaned as his bony arm broke from his shoulder and clattered to the floor. A toothless woman tore at her hair, her sunken eyes rolling wild and deep in their sockets. A tall man lifted a short man's head off his shoulder and held it up in a big game of keep away. And the short man grabbed it and then slammed it back in place. This is really weird, I whispered to Jake. Let's go before we're caught, okay? I grabbed his arm and pulled him towards the front door.
Hello?
A girl stopped me. A dead girl. She appeared about my age, except her hair was pure white and her eyes were faded.
Oh, and the skin on her face was cracked and peeling. How did you die? Huh? Die? She nodded. It was an accident. I swallowed hard. I've got to go now. I turned to Jake. We have to get away from here. But suddenly, a hoarse voice from the center of the crowded living room boomed out, "Let the party begin!" Cheers rang out, high peals of laughter. I heard shattering glass and turned in time to see a man shove his head through the window. And when he turned back laughing, he had chunks of jagged glass wedged between his teeth and jammed in his empty eye sockets. The cheers grew wilder. A laughing skull flew across the living room and bounced off the fireplace wall. Ghouls danced frantically in midair. A headless woman swung upside down from the dark chandelier. I'm ready to go now, Jake said, pulling my arm, and I could see the fear on his face. Keeping our backs against the wall, we moved through the screaming, laughing, dancing ghouls. We were almost to the door when the party came to a sudden halt. Everything stopped. Everyone froze in place, as if posing for a photo. I turned and I saw the dead girl who'd been talking to me. She held a large square mirror between her bony hands. "Will anyone reflect tonight?" she asked softly. "Will anyone reflect?" The girl held the mirror in front of a pair of ghoulish dancers. But from across the room, I could see that the couple made no reflection in the mirror. The girl moved on to a long-haired ghoul. "Do we all belong tonight, or will someone reflect?" The long-haired ghoul cast no reflection. Suddenly I knew what she was doing. It was a trap. Ghouls were dead. Their bodies didn't appear in the glass. But a living person? Someone who didn't belong at this party? We'd make a reflection. Jake and I were about to be caught. I grabbed the door handle and I twisted it, but the door wouldn't budge. And the girl held up the mirror in front of us. "Oh, look, I can explain. We didn't mean any harm. We'll go. We'll... I stared into the mirror. There was no reflection. There was no face staring back at me. I felt dazed. The room tilted in front of me, and I fell back against the door, gasping for breath. I don't understand, I muttered. I turned to see Ray, standing beside us. Standing so close that I could see that his right cheek was actually ripped open, and I could see his cheekbone jutting out. Ray in the mirror. Jake and I had no reflection. He nodded. "But why?" Jake asked. "We're not dead, we're alive." Jake scratched his open cheek.
"No, you're not. I saw you get hit by that truck. You started across the street and you were watching, and you didn't see it coming down the hill. It hit you both. Threw you across the street. You landed right in front of me."
No, you're lying, you're lying. The front door swung open and a blast of cold wind swept in over me. My whole body shivered. I turned and I saw Jake. He was shivering too. Someone pushed me hard away from the doorway, and the ghouls were limping, staggering, groaning, making their way out of the house. "Is the party over?" I asked Ray. "Where are they going?"
"It's nearly midnight. It's time to go outside and dance the Halloween dance. At midnight on Halloween, the dead do their dance under the full moon,"
Ray explained, leading us up the graveyard hill.
"For one moment, one terrifying moment, we all freeze and time stops. And then, when we begin to dance, when our circle moves forward, time moves forward again. It's a secret moment, the only time during the year when the living and the dead are one."
Jake and I joined the others at the top of the hill. I heard bones rattle and a snap of toothless, fleshless jaws. We formed a circle and we held hands, bony, cold hands with icicle fingers. We gazed up at the pale, cold moon so high above us, and I got an idea. My eyes darted around the circle of ghouls. Time will freeze, I thought. And when the ghouls start to dance, time will move forward again. But what if we all dance backward? What if the circle moves counterclockwise? Could we move time back to before the truck accident? Could Jake and I use the Halloween dance to return us to our lives? Well, it was a crazy, desperate idea, but I had to try. So there was no time to explain to Jake. The ghouls were standing stiffly now, gripping bony, frozen hands, locking into place.
and the dance was about to begin. Silence fell over the graveyard hill, a deeper silence than I had ever heard or felt. No one moved. The wind stopped. The grass stood straight and still. Not a sound. Time stopped. Midnight on Halloween. We were all alive, and we were all dead. Then I felt the circle start to move. So I moved quickly. The circle started to the left, but I bumped Jake the other way, and I lurched to the right. And I pulled the ghoul at my side with me. I took a big step to the right. Would the circle follow? Yes! We were all moving now, moving to a silent rhythm, moving counterclockwise, backwards. And the wind started up again, howling around our strange circle. The trees shifted and creaked. The tall winds whistled as they whipped low in the wind. A step, and then another. It was the Halloween dance, but going in reverse. I could feel it pulling us back through time. We were in the abandoned caretaker's mansion. Step, step. And then we were back down the hill, stopping at the graveyard gate. Step, step. Jake and I were standing in the truck headlights. Oh, the light was so blinding. And now it's dimming, darker and darker. Moving back in time, round and round. I tugged the ghoulish circle. Gotta get back. Gotta be alive again. And then I could see Jake and me at home at the Halloween party surrounded by Miranda and Madison and all of her princess pals. Back home we were warm and alive. I stopped dancing. I tried to drop the bony hand that held mine, but the ghoul wouldn't let go. He tightened his grip around my fingers and pulled me along. Step, step, stop, let go. The circle moved faster, faster. I was in school. I was back at summer camp. I was in school again. What class is this? What year? I tried to break free. I tried to break the circle, but the ghoul wouldn't release his icy grip. Wait, I stopped. Stop. And then I'm on the living room floor, but that's our old house before Madison was born. And we moved. And then another step. And the circle finally slowing. And I opened my mouth. And I started to cry. Finally, Mommy comes to pick me up. And she raises me over the crib. What's wrong, Marky? Are you well? Do you need to be changed again? Why? Doesn't she understand? Doesn't she know why I'm crying? The dance went on too long.
What's he crying about?
Dad says, coming up beside Mommy. He shakes his head and frowns.
So what on earth does he
have to be unhappy about? Mommy raises me close to her face. Come on, smile, Marky. It's a happy day. It's your first Halloween.